A lot of people want to know what the difference is between the Canon M50 and the 250D, also known as the SL3, when it comes to photography. Well, that's what we're talking about today, so let's jump to it. Welcome to the channel. My name is Kai Song, and first of all let me say, whoever you are and wherever you're watching this in the world, I hope you are well and keeping yourself safe. Now, it does seem strange to be doing a camera comparison review video amid the issues that we are facing, but that's what we're going to try to do today. We're looking at the Canon M50 and the SL3. Which one is better for photography and which one should you consider getting? Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey. And it's actually a Skillshare class that has inspired today's video. I recently took a class by Steven Vanasco, who is a photographer in Los Angeles, and he teaches a couple of classes on model photography. And what I found really interesting is that he sets project assignments in those classes, and one of those challenges is to go out to find a model, to find a location, and then use the tips and tricks that he teaches in his class in your photography session, which is exactly what we are doing today. And you can find that class as well as thousands of inspiring classes on Skillshare. And the first 500 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get 2 free months of premium membership, so you can go and explore your creativity. So make sure you go do that. So in order to test out these two cameras, and in line with Steven Vanasco's class, we found ourselves a model, Becca, and for our location we travelled to Greenwich in South London, which has some really good views and iconic places to shoot. And to give you a flavour for the types of picture that we can get on these cameras, we brought a selection of different lenses with us to test them out. First of all, the nifty 50, the 50mm f-stop 1.4, the full frame kit lens, which is the 24 to 105mm f-stop 4 Canon L lens, and the beauty maker, the 70 to 200mm f-stop 2.8 version 2 Canon L lens. Now, of course, all of these are EF mount lenses, so in order to connect them to the M50, which is an M mount, we have to use the Viltrox speed booster adapter, and you can get other adapters as well. This does give some advantages to the M50 over the SL3. For example, you can pull back some of the crop introduced by these cameras by a factor of 0.71, and you get an extra stop of light, which of course means a shallower depth of field. However, there are some drawbacks with the speed booster, and the first one is that you will have to pay for this piece of kit. It is not free, so you'll be looking at spending an extra $100 or £80 or so on top of the cost of the camera. And another issue is that you might notice some softness in the edges of your photos depending on the lens that you are using. So first up, the nifty 50, and this lens is probably in most people's camera bags already. It's cheap, it's got a large aperture, and it's small, so it's convenient to just have with you all the time. I just throw it in my camera bag even if I don't intend on using it. It's just nice to have. And we started off by taking portraits with this lens on both cameras. We also tried to get full body shots with it, as well as trying to capture images with Canary Wharf Business District in the background. And because of its large aperture, it's easy to create a aesthetically pleasing bokeh with this lens, which is particularly nice for portrait photos. And here we have some side-by-side comparison shots taken on the M50 and the SL3 using the nifty 50. So moving on to the 24 to 105mm Canon L lens. The L series is made for professional use, and so these lenses cost a fair amount more than your standard Canon lenses, and you should hopefully notice the quality difference of these when compared to the standard Canon glass. And that short focal length of 24mm gives us a nice wide angle view that enables us to frame our model with much more of the background in view. And going back to Steven Vanasco's course on outdoor model photography and capturing subjects with landscapes, he gives us some good tips on how to try and frame our model in landscape shots which is much trickier than it looks. Here we try to frame Becca so that she's in the middle of the shot, as well as trying to incorporate some rule of thirds for our compositions so that the landscape is in there, but she stands out in the picture. And again, here we have some side-by-side comparison shots taken by the M50 and the SL3 using the 24 to 105mm full-frame kit lens. Now moving on to some more serious glass, the Canon 70 to 200mm f-stop 2.8 version 2 L lens is a super versatile lens used by professionals the world over to capture sports, wildlife, portraiture, weddings and event photography. And we decided to see what pictures we could capture on the M50 and the 250D with this beauty lens. Again, it's great for portraits. Everything just seems to melt into buttery goodness in the background, but we also moved much further back to try and incorporate more of the landscape into some full body shots. And again, here are some side-by-side comparison shots taken on the M50 and the SL3 using the 70 to 200mm full-frame kit lens. So overall, we took about 1,500 photos between these two cameras, and shifting through them all to find the ones that I feel looked particularly good took more than a few hours. Now, we shot all of our images using the largest image quality setting, as well as the CRAW option, or the .CR3 file format, which both of these cameras support. And CRAW is a compressed version of RAW, which allows your files to be 40% smaller, with a minimum loss of quality when compared to a non-compressed file. And the dynamic range of these cameras can also be clearly seen in the CRAW files. For example, if we look at the cloud layers in a lot of our JPEG pictures, they look really blown out, especially as we were filming on an overcast day. But if you take these CRAW files into Photoshop or Lightroom and adjust the highlights and the shadows, we can really pull out the details of the clouds and actually find a lot more of those details actually still left in our image. And I found the CR3 files particularly easy to edit in Photoshop on both my PC and MacBook Pro for both the M50 and the SL3. Now I know what you're thinking, what about photos taken with the kit lenses? The lenses that you actually get with the cameras themselves. We did bring those with us on the day of the photo shoot and totally forgot to use them. So let's go do that now. So quickly, we've come to the park to test out the kit lens on both the M50 and the SL3.
Yeah, that's amazing, Daddy.
Thank you. And of course, we've got the park here, lovely flowers, construction site in the background. And now you're going to do some poses for us.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to do some poses for us?
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I'll give you some ice cream, okay? Bribery. So when I bought the M50, I got this lens, the 15 to 45mm image stabilized kit lens. And for the SL3, I got this, the 18 to 55mm image stabilized EFS mount lens. And we walked around the park to try and get some comparison shots of these two different lenses. Again, trying to use some of the tips from Stephen's class, and also an opportunity to test out some movement shots to see how clear the details are on higher shutter speeds. Don't know if you can see this, but we've got eye tracking there. That's one of the advantages of the SL3, the eye tracking. You enjoying that? Yeah. Did you do a good photo shoot today?
Yeah.
So which one is best for photography, in my opinion? Well, it's an extremely difficult call, because paired with the right lens in good light, you've got very similar picture quality, not to mention the fact that a lot of the specs are the same. So the M50 and the SL3 both are crop frame cameras. They both have an APS-C sensor, 24 megapixel sensor. They both use Canon's Digic 8 processor, and they both shoot in the new CR3 RAW file format. So essentially the SL3 and the M50 are the same camera, except one is a DSLR and the other one is mirrorless. But there are some noticeable differences when using these cameras for photography that might tip the balance for you. And the first one is that the M50 shoots at 10 frames per second, while the SL3 shoots at half of that rate at 5 frames per second. The M50 has 143 selectable autofocus points, while the SL3 has 9 basic autofocus points when using the optical viewfinder. However, this increases to a massive 3,975 autofocus points in live view mode. On the SL3, Canon has removed the center pin on the hot shoe that a lot of third-party flashes use. Now, some flash brands have already worked around this issue, like Voking and Godox, but Canon is basically trying to limit users to purchasing their branded flashes only. The M50 still has that center pin, so more inexpensive flash options are available to you. Battery life on the M50 is poor. It ran out just before the end of our photo shoot, but we still managed to get a few hundred photos out of it, while the SL3 still seemed to have plenty of juice left in the tank at the end of about 3 hours of semi-use. I mean, just bring some extra batteries. They're pretty small. When it comes to general use, the SL3 is perhaps easier to use because of its size. It's slightly easier to grip, especially if you're used to using DSLR cameras. The M50 might be a bit more fiddly for you, but it's a minor thing. It's something that you can get used to relatively quickly. When it comes to cost, which will probably be a big deciding factor for many of you out there, the SL3 is currently marked at $650 or £550, and the M50 is slightly lower at $600, around £500. And this is the cost for a new camera with the kit lens. Bearing in mind that if you want to get the Viltrox speed booster, you will have to part with a little bit more cash if you want to include that for the M50. So I guess my advice would be this. If you are a beginner photographer, you want to get the best bang for your buck, then go for the SL3 and get yourself the nifty 50mm lens, and you will be good to go. I mean, just quickly look at the photo comparisons between the 50mm and the 70 to 200mm L lens on the SL3. And this is an $80 lens versus a $1,500 lens. And I mean, as a beginner, you're not going to complain about the quality that you're getting from this camera and this lens. Now, this is not to say that the M50 isn't a good investment. For photography, it's a very impressive camera. You can create some visually stunning pictures with it. And I've seen people create some incredible photos with it. It's compact, it's light, it's versatile. Yes, it costs a little bit more to invest in the adapter or a speed booster, but I personally love taking it out, and I especially love using it for video projects. Now, I have made a separate video specifically on using the Canon M50 for video projects, and I'll leave a little link to that down in the description below. So what are you guys thinking? Are you leaning towards the M50 or the SL3 250D? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. I hope you found this content useful. If you haven't done so already, guys, do consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and hitting up that bell for notifications. So all that's left to say is stay creative, imagine, implement, and inspire. Stay safe, and I'll catch you next time on KaiCreative.